Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you. In Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 9th, 2019. Ronaldo Deportes. Big C will be actually doing some traveling tonight, and we'll catch up with him on Monday. This is a beautiful, happy Friday to everybody who's happy about being blessed and highly favored. What a great way to look at life, and I'm really appreciating all the great things going on in the sports universe, especially the teams that are starting to play NFL football. There's a lot of things happening that's not always good news. We already have some players that are hurt. I hate when that happens in the world of the NFL. Major League Baseball, a lot of good teams are playing some solid baseball right now in that chase for August. They're always trying to position themselves for position in the playoffs, and we know a lot of people are looking at who's going to finish where. And of course, those Dodgers, just the mighty Dodgers, looking good, as well as the New York Yankees and a lot of teams out there. I do want to say today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. And I was just thinking about, of all the travels this summer, and especially the last month, and having so many things to be grateful for. And number one is just being alive and having a lot of things to look forward to. I do say a lot of our people in this country have been suffering through a lot of issues, especially in El Paso, Texas, and also in Ohio. And I just want to just say again, thoughts and prayers with everybody. I know everybody says we say that too many times. We want to find a way to bring healing to people. And I hope that we can do some of that on Big C Sports. I just want to say that everybody has hope, and we can keep our hopes alive and believe that whatever you want to be, you can be. It's a shame, to me personally, when young children have their lives snuffed out, and sometimes there's nowhere for them to turn. I saw something that was heartbreaking. I know in the sports world we're supposed to just look above those things and only focus on who won the game. I hate people who think just like that, who won the game, have no empathy for others. I refuse to be that. And I just want to say, for everybody who has a heart, how would you feel if we had a country that was rounding up white parents and leaving their kids isolated and no one to watch over them, and saying, well, you're not here legally, or you're here, your visa expired, and then justifying it? And when I saw through my travels throughout the country, and especially in California, there are a lot of kids that have been of Latin descent, the kids of color, and to have young kids because their parents were taken out by a society that also, the men who decided this were Caucasian. I'm sure the Native Americans are very displeased about someone telling them that they're here illegally, because a lot of my Native American brethren, and some that are even family members, they're very perturbed by what's happening with our society and having this attitude of people who are not here illegally. And I just want to say that I'm fed up with it, but I'm not going to stop talking about it like many other sports programs do and pretending that it doesn't exist. If there was a movie called A Time to Kill with Sam Jackson and Matthew McConaughey, and Sam Jackson actually took some poetic justice, revenge against the people who had harmed his daughter. And Matthew McConaughey argued to the mostly white jury as they wanted to send Sam Jackson to prison or even the death penalty. And he said, just imagine if the kid was white. And the all-white jury acted as if they had a consciousness. And we talked about John Howard Griffith, the book Black Like Me, and how during the civil rights movement, there were some people who went, John Howard Griffith actually went through the South during Jim Crow to see what it was like for people of color. And he painted his skin black, and he was treated like a lot of people were telling you they were being treated, and it was unacceptable. So our society's moved on from that, or have we? And when you see young kids of any color, we just don't have a history of seeing young white kids being left by themselves because their parents have been taken out of the country or arrested or rounded up. And for anyone who thinks that's okay, you don't have a heart. I don't care who you are. I just hope that we can put an end to that and find a way to be helpful as opposed to hurtful. Statue of Liberty says, give it your tithe and your poor. I've been to the Statue of Liberty. It's a gorgeous monument. But at the same time, the words don't mean anything if you don't live by it. So I just want to say our thoughts and prayers to every family member that's missing their parents or their children. This country's better than that. I know a lot of knuckleheads. They just want to know who won the game, man. Well, we don't care about what you think. I just want to make sure that I put my 2 cents out there in the universe so that at least something can be done by some conscientious sports people, and I hope that Big C Sports is not the only one. I want to give out a helpful line for people who may need some help. It's a national hotline. It's a suicide hotline. It's also for people who need help. You can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. A lot of kids are really out of school, getting ready to go to college, getting ready to go to high school. And sometimes they have issues too with being cyberbullying is really big, bigger than I even expected. And as a parent, I want to make sure that not only my children, but any child that needs someone to reach out to, they can do it. They don't have to be tough. You just learn to text 838-255. That's 838-255, and hopefully they can get some help, because that's what it's all about. How can we reach out and help our fellow brethren? And I want to make sure I do that. I'm going to close tonight's show with a special tribute to Friday Night Lights, Big C's Friday Night Lights. We do it all the time for high school football. And then also just talking about some of the fights that we've seen over the years and just hopefully bring some of that memory back. Yesterday we did a show on old, sports people, because sometimes we forget that they have a history that we don't hear about because they're not on the major sports networks. And I want to make sure that we do our part to at least put them out there, so that's always important to me. I do want to open up with tonight's Major League Baseball. There's a lot going on in Major League Baseball tonight. I mean, it's amazing. I love the game. I want to start off with what happened over yesterday. The Florida Marlins, who practically have the worst team in the major leagues, beat up on the East leading Atlanta Braves last night. Brian Anderson homered twice and led the Marlins to a 9-2 victory over the Atlanta Braves. And Dallas, starter Dallas Keuchel could not make it out of the third. And so that's something that the Florida Marlins, they at least had something to look forward to. Big C and I were just talking about, why do the teams in Florida have dome stadiums when they play in one of the most beautiful parts of the country, and that's in Florida, and Tampa, and also in Miami. So congratulations, Florida, getting on the winning side of the game for a change. The Boston Red Sox, Chris Sale he's been hot and cold all season long, but last night he fanned 13 batters and there 2 hitters as the Boston Red Sox beat the California Angels 3-0, and Sam Travis went yard for the Sox. I was telling Big C that if you think about this, it's just my opinion. I know they talk about Mike Trout being the best player in baseball. He's not worth $430 million. Nobody is. There are teams that you could buy for $430 million back in the day. So one player is not worth that. And as good as he is, they didn't score. He didn't rally his team to score. Boston, there's something about the chemistry around Boston and Fenway Park that can make a dominant player seem average. So again, Chris Sale showed how dominant he could be. And to blank the Angels, and the Angels have the most expensive player in baseball, money doesn't buy you wins. It's a propaganda, in my own opinion. And I know Big C disagrees with me. He thinks that Trout's the best player in baseball. I don't think so. But I think he is one of the top 10. He's just not number 1 in my opinion. The New York Yankees are just a terror right now in the American League. You have Gio Urshela hit 2 home runs for the 2nd straight game as the New York Yankees outslung the Toronto Blue Jays at 12-6 score. And you love seeing baseball, especially when we have teams from Canada. And we only have one team from Canada right now, unless Tampa's going to go up there and play in Montreal like they were talking about doing in the next couple of years. Toronto's going to have to carry the banner for Canada. On the West Coast, which is where I live, the San Francisco Giants, they're trying to wake up Madison Bumgarner. And he carried out a no-hit bid into the 6th inning and won his 4th straight with a 5-0 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies, who also have a high-priced player in Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper's not worth $330 million. If he is, then why can't he carry the team to a win in San Francisco against a team that's hoping to get into the wild card chase in the National League? You can't put it on one player, but when one player makes more money than 7 or 8 guys combined just doesn't make any sense. He's not helping them get wins almost 2 out of 3 nights in a row. But I want to just bring up, that's just my thoughts on Major League Baseball. And I know everybody has their own opinion about who's the best player. I still say, yeah, I'm biased, but I thought Barry Bonds was the best player in baseball. I mean, the home run king, of course, but he was also great at base stealing. He was walked more than anybody else. And Barry did it when he was more chastised than anybody else. He's no more developed than Mike Trout, but Mike Trout's not under any scrutiny the way Barry Bonds was. I know people can talk about the era of allegedly steroids, Canseco and Socha, etc. But if you were testing some of the same guys today, maybe would you find Barry Bonds never tested positive? I mean, people can throw shade at him, but I think when Barry Bonds did his thing, he did it with a lot of people hating on him too. And that's why I don't know Barry personally, but I love the fact that he, like his father and Bobby Bonds, they were great players, but they came under a lot of scrutiny also. So I will always stand up for the underdog because I know he played at Sarah High School in San Mateo, the same high school that Tom Brady went to. And it isn't amazing. Sarah High School has produced Lynn Swann. They produced Tom Brady. They produced Barry Bonds over in San Mateo in the West Catholic Athletic League. Now think about this. Lynn Swann went on to be athletic director for the USC Trojans, a 4-time Super Bowl champion. He played at the University of Southern California, won several Rose Bowls, and then to get onto television, he went on to work with ABC Monday Night Football, as well as other sporting programs. Now, Sarah High School, San Mateo, California. Tom Brady, 6 Super Bowl championships. Same school. He was not a star athlete in high school. In fact, his sister was a better athlete. He was going to go to Cal Berkeley, but wanted to go to Michigan instead. But 6 Super Bowl champions, and he led Michigan to a Rose Bowl. And then you look at Barry Bonds. Out of same high school, Sarah High School in San Mateo, went on to stardom at Arizona State. And there's so many people that said he was going to be the best player in baseball when he was at Sarah. Played at Arizona State, didn't play at Stanford or Cal in their own backyard. But he went on to stardom with the Pittsburgh Pirates and then the San Francisco Giants. But he's the all-time leading home run hitter in Major League Baseball. And he played at Sarah High School in San Mateo. That's Barry Bonds, that's Tom Brady, that's Lynn Swann. And there's several other great players that had played at Sarah High School in San Mateo, happens to be a California team. So I just want to say that whether it's Trout or anyone else that wants to say that they're the best ever, think about 3 of the best ever that came out of one school. Out of all the high schools in California, and out of all the high schools in the country, 3 came out of a Northern California Bay Area power, and that's Sarah High School of San Mateo, who also has several state football playoffs and championships to add to what they've been doing over the years. So I think that's an amazing school, something in the water in the Bay Area. I want to just, since we're talking about some baseball, I want to run down this thought about Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred. He has gotten it right. The Chicago White Sox, they will host the New York Yankees next August at the Field of Dreams in Dryersville, Iowa. That's a small town. It's a small town, and it's a small state. But remember Kevin Costner in the Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. I think Manfred's gotten it right. Like in Canton, they host the Hall of Fame game. To take Major League Baseball and do what NBA basketball does, and you take them where the people are, and oftentimes where the kids can't get out of those small towns and go play. And to have that, I just think that he hit a home run in the words of the baseball vernacular. Really proud that Manfred's done that. I want to run down tonight's Happy Friday schedule for Major League Baseball. A lot of games are already underway. Houston's playing at Baltimore. You have Miley versus Bundy on the mound. The New York Yankees are playing at Toronto again. You have J.A. Happ versus Sean Reed Foley on the mound. And then you have, again, over in Boston, Beantown, Fenway Park, Los Angeles Angels at the Boston Red Sox. You have Jaime Barrera and Brian Johnson on the mound. If Boston can sweep the Angels, don't tell me that Mike Trout's the best player in baseball. Even if you're not, I guess, 100%, and anyone can say that's the case when you don't perform, then you don't lift the other players up. I'm not knocking him, but he's no Barry Bonds. I just don't see it at all. The Washington at New York Mets, you have Strasburg. I think he's an amazing pitcher versus Marcus Stroman. Atlanta at Miami. Look at Miami. Miami's a team that, even though they're down, they can beat people. And to beat the Braves is a tall feat, but Major League Baseball, anyone can beat anybody, it seems. Julio Teheran versus Caleb Smith on the mound. You have Chicago versus Cincinnati at Cincinnati. And you have Hugh Darvish and Trevor Mauer on the mound for those two great teams. I love the C on the Chicago hat as well as Cincinnati. I know Big C, we and I talk about Big C Sports, and I have people say, so what does the C stand for in Big C Sports? I say, well, it can stand for Christ, it can stand for championships, it can stand for whatever you want it to be. My last name's Curry, so maybe that works also. It means whatever you want it to mean. But when you look at Chicago, and you also look at Cincinnati, I think they have great programs, and looking forward to seeing them represent the Big C championship game someday, if they should ever meet up. Texas at Milwaukee. You have Allard versus Gonzalez on the mound. Cleveland at Minnesota. And you have Bieber versus Smeltzer on the mound going for those two teams. Pittsburgh at St. Louis. You have Archer versus Dakota Hudson. And I just want to see, no matter what happens in baseball, I've always said, yeah, I'm a homer in a little bit, but Pittsburgh is a great program at times. I think they have maybe the second greatest baseball stadium in baseball outside of Oracle Ballpark now, which I think they should change it back to Pac Ballpark in San Francisco, where the Giants play. But they have a beautiful downtown view when you're in Pittsburgh. But this game is at St. Louis with the Arch, and I just love seeing St. Louis be successful in the world of baseball. Also, Arizona at the LA Dodgers. You have Robbie Ray versus Walker Buehler on the mound. I love the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the kind of team, they can be down, but they're not out. Even if they're down in the bottom of the ninth, down by one, this is a team that's shown that they can come back and win games, and they've done that a lot. So I look forward to the Dodgers kind of walking their way, no pun intended, into the NLCS, but you got to earn it on the field. Also, Colorado at San Diego, one of the most beautiful places in the country. If you've ever driven down Interstate 5 going from Southern California to San Diego, there's a part on Interstate 5 where you see the curvature of the ocean, and it looks like the highway is going to go into the Pacific Ocean. It's one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen, and anyone who's been down to San Diego, it's amazing how beautiful that city is, and the trip down there is definitely worth the drive. Also, you have Tampa Bay at Seattle, another beautiful city. I was just talking today about going up Interstate 5. It connects the Canadian border to Mexico in some beautiful cities. I remember driving up to Seattle, and it's a beautiful. Puget Sound's gorgeous. The beautiful buildings in downtown Seattle looking over Puget Sound, and I just love that area. And then you have Safeco Field. You have Jalen Beeks versus Marco Gonzalez on the mound for those two great teams. Now, Philadelphia's at San Francisco tonight in the Bay Area, Northern California. You have Drew Smyly versus Tyler Beatty, and tickets are as low as $13 in San Francisco. That, to me, says, yes, we appreciate our baseball fans, and we want to make sure that they can come out and watch games. Oakland at Chicago, and you have Frears versus Detweiler on the mound. Kansas City Royals at the Detroit Tigers, and Edwin Jackson versus Brad Keller, and those two matchup games. So Major League Baseball has a lot going for it, and I know when we get around to the month of September, especially in October, that's when everybody loves baseball. I've loved it ever since I was a little boy, and even I was talking to my mother not too long ago about how she actually coached my Little League Baseball team when I was a little boy. Not many young men can say that their mother actually coached their Little League Baseball team. I also struck out 11 players in one game, and I always remember that because I think I was about 11 or 12 years old, something about the number 11. But everybody knows baseball is back. It's always great when we get to the point of competing for a playoff run, and a lot of teams are going to be making that run, and we want to see that they're having success with that too. I want to just say, as we love baseball, I want to transition over to what's going on with football. In football tonight, it has a schedule that's not a big schedule, but Tampa Bay is at Pittsburgh. Minnesota's at New Orleans. It is preseason, we understand that. But I would say at least two of these teams will be playoff teams. And you might want to wonder, Big C, if you follow me, who might be out of Tampa Bay, in Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and New Orleans. I would say Pittsburgh and New Orleans will most likely find a way into the playoffs. Probably not for Minnesota and probably not for Tampa. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. But I also want to just look at some of the things that happened last night in NFL football. If you think about already, there's two critical players that were hurt during the preseason. Jermaine Kearse, the Detroit Lions and wide receiver, broken leg. Doug Sudfeld, Philadelphia Eagles, backup quarterback with a broken wrist. I know football's a physical game. I know there's no way to keep it 100% healthy. But when you're starting out the season in preseason and players are already being injured, and I know we talk about having more games and they want to make 18 regular season games, you have guys being taken out in preseason. I don't think we need 18 regular season games. I know we may get them, but to me it's just for more money. It's not for a player's safety. I think the schedule that people were talking about last night and hoping that they could see something great. And I think when you think of the pressure that's put on the number one draft pick in Kyler Murray, I want to say I think the kid held up pretty well. He only had one series, but Murray was 6 for 7, 44 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions in one series. I think he answered the question for a lot of people again, and I hope they come out and say who they were, because Big C Sports, especially Big C, was saying that Murray would be a star player in the NFL and he would force a lot of defensive coordinators to change their tune. But remember all the sportscasters, and I hope you do, that were saying this guy's too small. He's not big enough. He's going to get worn out by NFL defensive lines because he can't see over the top. This kid was 40-1 at Allen High School in Texas. 40-1. He only lost 2 games in college football. One was to Texas in the Red River Shootout, and that was an overtime game. And then Oklahoma in the college football playoff series. They outscored Oklahoma. Actually, Oklahoma outscored Alabama in the last 3 quarters of that game. So Kyler Murray comes on to the NFL scene with much ridicule by almost, I would say 90% of the broadcasters out there were saying he's too small, he's not going to make it, he can't see over the top, he can't throw downfield, and they were saying he'd be better playing baseball or that he would even be better if he played receiver. Just taking him out of everything that's made him great in his career. Well, what did he do? As we mentioned again, 6 of 7, 44 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but in one series. Imagine if he ran 15 or 20 series in a regular game. He's going to average about 300 yards passing. And I guarantee you, if they let him be who he is, he'll probably add at least 40 to 50 yards rushing per game. There's another player that people have paid a lot of attention to, Daniel Jones. He was 5 for 5, 67 yards, 1 touchdown in one series. So Daniel Jones had a lot of scrutiny also coming out of Duke and being able to play for the Giants. Again, it is preseason, but the man completed 100% of his passes. I still want to see how he does with the rest of his preseason. Dwayne Haskins, who I think would be a star, didn't have the best game last night, but that's okay. He was 8 of 14, 117 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in 6 series. Now, people might say, well, he had a little bit of a jitters, and he's going to have to learn this offense. But Dwayne Haskins threw 50 touchdown passes at Ohio State, and I think he has a bright future ahead of him. I really think it's going to be great for the Redskins offense. It's just a matter of time. Antonio Brown, the deal's already imploded with the Oakland Raiders. Whether it's foot problems or whatever else is going on with the Raiders, John Gruden, I know they were on a TV series, and they're trying to give John Gruden a long stick. But here's a man that stole $100 million and traded away a lot of players that were all pro players to try to rebuild the Raiders with the draft. I want the Raiders to do well. I've been watching the Raiders since way back in the day that Al Davis was coaching. And of course with John Madden and Art Shell. Just seeing some of the great Raiders over the years, growing up in Northern California, watching them play. I still want to see them do great, but I just don't feel the vibe right now with the Oakland Raiders. And I want to see how long that John Gruden will keep his welcome, probably at least until they move to Las Vegas. And he's going to be there for some time. So tonight's matchup for NFL is not a big one. We just talked about that. But I just want to run down some scores from last night. Tonight, Tampa Bay at Pittsburgh, Minnesota at New Orleans. And when you look at what happened in yesterday's preseason games, it's week 2 basically of preseason outside of the Hall of Fame game. You had Indianapolis at Buffalo. It was Buffalo 24-16. Matt Barkley threw for 126 yards. And Christian Wade was the rushing leader with 65 yards. And then Darius Fontaine had 63 yards as a receiver. New York, it's like New York. And you had the Jets losing that game to the Giants by the score of 31-22. Alex Tanney had 190 yards passing, and then Trent Cannon was he rushed for 20 yards as a rushing leader, and T.J. Jones, the receiving leader, was 72 yards. So that was all about New York. Washington at Cleveland. It was Cleveland 30, Washington 10, and you have Gilbert threw for 135 yards. Dearness Johnson was he was the leading rusher at 23 yards. Rashard Higgins 98 yards receiving. You have New England at Detroit. New England 31, Detroit 3. And Jarrett Stidham, 179 yards passing. Nick Brossette, 66 yards rushing. And Jacoby Myers, 69 yards receiving. Atlanta at Miami, 34-27 Miami over Atlanta. Josh Rosen, 191 yards, again out of UCLA by way of Arizona. And Quadre Olson, 41 yards rushing, was a rushing leader in that game. Preston Williams, 97 yards receiving as a receiving leader. Tennessee at Philadelphia, 27-10. Tennessee over Philadelphia. Nate Studfield, 177 yards passing. Jeremy McNichols, 44 yards rushing. And Khalif Raymond, 80 yards receiving, led the game in that. Jacksonville at Baltimore, 29-0. Baltimore blanks Jacksonville. Trace McSorley out of Penn State, 85 yards passing. Not that impressive, but he played okay. You have Jalen Hill, 33 yards rushing, was a leader in that game. Chris Moore, 48 yards receiving, was the leading receiver in the contest. And again, it's preseason. They're not playing the complete four quarters. Carolina at Chicago, it was 23-13. Chase Daniel, 120 yards passing. And Karras Whittle Jr., 35 yards rushing. Ian Bunting, 77 yards, is the receiving leader in that game. Now think about the next stat I'm going to throw at you. It was Houston at Green Bay. Green Bay 28, Houston 26. Joe Webb III, 286 yards passing. That's a regular season performance. So he looked very good last night. Dexter Williams, 62 yards rushing, and Tyrone Johnson, 48 yards receiving. You have the LA Chargers at Arizona. It was Arizona 17-13 over the Cardinals down in the desert. I think they had tickets as low as $2. If they would do that more often in every sport, I think it would let more people see that the teams do have a heart. They're not trying to break everybody's bank account. You look at Brett Hundley, 104 yards passing. Easton Stick, 51 yards rushing. And then Trent Sherfield, 44 yards receiving, was the leading receiver. Denver at Seattle. I remember when they were both in the AFC West. And now you have Seattle's in the NFC West. But Seattle 22, Denver 14. Drew Lock had a good game, 180 yards passing. Royce Freeman had 49 yards rushing. And then Jazz Ferguson, 54 yards. So a lot of people are looking forward to what's going to happen in the world of the NFL. And I look forward to it also. It's nice to see players that are playing the game, and you see some of the younger players, stepping up. Really impressed with Murray. Impressed with just a lot of young players. But you got to get into the regular season before you start getting too happy and carried away about it. I want to just say before we get into the final half of Big C Sports, I want to pay homage to high school football all around this country. Friday Night Lights. I know ESPN carries high school football on Friday, and I don't know if that's always best that they do it on Saturdays, but sometimes they'll take high school football into the weekends. But it is great for these young players to get on the map. They may never make it at the next level in college and definitely pro, but I love when major networks will do that. Big C Sports, I've been covering high school football since way back in the late 70s. We've just seen some of the great programs in California and up around Northern California. Some of the great programs in California, from Long Beach Poly, which has as many high school players that have played in the NFL as any high school program in the country. Schools like Loyola of Los Angeles, and then Mater Dei of Southern California, of Santa Ana, California, is Mater Dei High School. They're the last two-time national champions under Bruce Rollison. And then going through the Central Valley of Bakersfield High School, I believe they're the second winningest football program in the history of California. And that's just an amazing program down in the Central Valley. Going further up north in the Fresno area, where you have Fresno, Clovis west of Fresno, there's Clovis High School, Buchanan of Clovis, Central High School also of Clovis. It's one of the better programs at the small level has been programs like Dos Palos and Chowchilla, as well as Tulare High School. Over the years, they built great programs. Kingsburg, as well as one of the better programs, talent-wise, in the Central Valley, is Edison High School of Fresno. Going further north, you have Merced, and they've always had a great program with a lot of kids until they start building that city out more. Programs like Atwater with Castle Air Force Base going through there, some of the towns in the Central Valley. You go up further to Turlock, and then Modesto. There's Bayer High School in Modesto, Grace Davis in Modesto, now Central Catholic. Seems to be the team that's beating everybody. Up in the Stockton area, St. Mary's of Stockton. They've been a good program for Northern California, as well as Tracy High School. The Bulldogs have had success playing football over the years too. Going up further north, you find Elk Grove High School. There's Cosumnes Oaks of Elk Grove, Franklin High School of Elk Grove, also Laguna Creek. And then more so in the Sacramento area, you even have Sacramento High School that plays pretty good football. You have Capital Christian. Their programs like Jesuit High School of the Sacramento area, Del Oro of Loomis, Grant High School of Del Paso Heights. But I think programs like Granite Bay, and I would say the new kid on the block since Cordova was the dominant program in the 70s. Grant and Elk Grove were the dominant programs in the 90s and 2000s. The last decade has been Folsom High School out of Northern California. They've been a dominant juggernaut in the Sac King section. Over to the Bay Area, you have schools like Bishop O'Dowd out of Oakland. There's a program in the East Bay called Pittsburgh High School. They've been very good over the years. Also Foothill High School of Pleasanton. There's Monte Vista of Danville, Clayton Valley of Concord. They've had some dominant programs over the years. And then there's the number one program in Northern California over the last probably 30 years, De La Salle of Concord, California. The last time they lost to a Northern California football program, that was Clovis West of Fresno back in 2004, if my math is right. And that was an amazing feat to have 151 wins. But other programs, we talked about St. Mary's of Berkeley is good. Berkeley High School, the Yellow Jackets, one of the older programs in high school football in California. And also down in the peninsula, you have programs like St. Francis of Mountain View, Bellarmine Prep, Oak Grove of San Jose, Sarah High School of San Mateo, and then down in the South Bay, Los Gatos High School. There's just been so much to look forward to when it comes up on the high school football season. So I wanted to pay homage to that before we get into the high school rankings. I do want to say, when it comes to Big C Sports, you can follow Big C Sports Monday through Friday at 5 to 6 p.m. worldwide on the number one podcast network in the universe, on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker. You can follow Big C Sports on a program that I really like. It's called Xfinity Comcast. If you have a television set, and most people do, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. You also can find it if you have an app called Alexa. Just say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You hear from our sponsors. You're here. Welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing. I really appreciate all of our sponsors for the support. And it's not where you are, it's where you're going. And we've been constantly climbing the ladder since we started doing Big C Sports. I also want to just say we're going to take what's called the Big C pause. And after we do the Big C pause, we're going to come right back. And we hope that you'll come back with us. And we'll talk more about high school football on the Big C Sports Show. All right, we are back on the Big C Sports Show for Big C Sports, and I just appreciate all the things that are happening in the world of Big C Sports. And I know my partner's out traveling tonight, but I know that everybody has a desire to be something in life, and you gotta work hard to make it happen. You gotta be tunnel vision. You gotta not worry about what people think and say. There are people who will be for you. There are people who will go against you, but don't worry about it. People, at times, they only want to see what's the finished product. To me, that's analogous to planting a seed in the ground and looking at it the next day and saying, well, where's my vegetable? Where's my harvest? You have to let sunshine hit it. You got to put water into it, some fertilizer. And with time and God's grace, it will grow. There are oak trees that grow, pine trees that grow. You have some tower redwood trees that grow 300 feet tall in California. They start with a small seed. It's just a little oak seed, and then they grow. And we keep growing our program the same way, and I just appreciate the opportunities and the conversations of more things to come with Big C Sports. And I know we talk so much about sports and politics and news and how can people do better in life, and hopefully they'll have a chance to reach out and touch someone that's going to believe in them. And then not just believe in them, but give them some hope. That with some hope that they can go on to the next level. No matter what it is, everybody wants to be successful at something, but you can't do it if you don't go forward. I was just talking to my mother about something today, and she reminded me of something she reminded me of when I was a little boy. And we talked about rejection and how, as an African American, you face a lot of rejection. Some's known and some is unknown. But there's something about pushing through, and you got to keep pushing through. And you don't stop because somebody puts an obstacle in front of you. I'm just telling you that because the only reason you hear this podcast now is because we did not stop when people put up a roadblock. We did not stop when someone tried to undercut what we were doing. And I just want to say this tonight because I want to say, going into Happy Friday, that there was about 4 years ago when we were doing a program, everyone we started with, they're gone. They're not even on the air anymore. They're gone. But there are people who tried to create a roadblock that are gone. Because like my mother taught me a long time ago, you keep going. You just keep going. There will be people who come onto your highway. There will be people who will exit your highway. Let them exit. They have a different destination. But you got to know what you want and keep going. And don't let anything get in your way. The people who said, well, I told you you wouldn't make it, they're the same ones who will ask you for money when you make it. Just believe that. Tupac even talked about that back in the day. I want to just touch on real quick, in the Liberty National Golf Club in New Jersey City, New Jersey, the total purse is $9,250,000. You have Dustin Johnson, he's minus 12. He's in the leader today. And you have Spieth minus 11. You have Answers at minus 10. Merritt's minus 10, and Reed is minus 10. And you think about all of the people who want to play golf. You just got to get out and do it. There's a lot of golf courses in California that have closed. I remember Big C Sports was going to host the Hall of Fame golf tournament over at Silverado Golf Course in Napa. And there's some things that happened, and they didn't put the tournament together, but it's going to happen again. But it's going to be moved down to Arizona. Not Arizona, but Las Vegas. And so I'm expecting to be there for the golf tournament, NFL Hall of Fame golf tournament with celebrities from Hollywood. It's going to be held in Las Vegas, as a lot of things are. So Big C Sports will be there also. We'll announce that coming up. And I just want to say that without going forward, like my mother and my father have always taught me, keep going forward. Don't worry about the people that say, well, if you're going to make it, you would have made it already. And now we're on the #1 podcast network in the universe, an iHeartRadio podcast. And we are on television, Xfinity Comcast Television. I'm just telling you, for the people who keep saying someone got to open a door for you, open your own door. People will come and go. Let them come and go. But if you know what you want, remember, God gave it to you. It's your dream. You got to make it come true. I'm saying this because I know there's a lot of young people who still believe. A lot of older people, they become cynical. They look at where you are. And we're going to build Big C Sports into a $100 million program. And I already know that because the funding's already set. $100 million. I remember there's a person who started a television network. She was an intern at first. She's 76 years old now. She's worth $460 million. She's an African-American woman. She was born in Jim Crow. She was told no many, many times. I'm going to have an interview with her soon. I'm not going to mention her name now, and it's not Oprah. But she owns over 50 radio stations. 50. From being an intern that did not get paid for what she did. You know how many times people told her, no, you're not going to make it. You're wasting your time. Oh, they won't let you have that because you're black. They won't let you have that because you're a woman. The woman's worth $500 million, and she's only 70, but she has the spirit of a 40-year-old person. And she inspires me. And you'll hear her when she's on our program. And she's the real deal. And so are we. And I just appreciate everybody who has a dream. Don't worry about the naysayers. Believe me, keep your mind on your craft. Keep your mind on your money. And when the money shows up, people will change. Don't worry about it. Just remember how they were when they thought you didn't have what you have. It's about being persistent and going forward. I'm telling you, $100 million. You'll see our network as we blossom because God's already made that happen. I want to touch on one more thing before I get into this homage I have with high school football. I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the top 25 in college football because to me, I want to pay homage not only to my parents, but there was a gentleman when I played Pop Warner football, and I felt like quitting, like a lot of people, because I wasn't getting my way. I was walking around with my head down. I remember being on an all-star team in Pop Warner. Next year, I'm saying this because young people need to hear this. The next year, I was about to quit because we had a different coach. And he didn't see this value that I thought he should see in me, right? I have a former coach by the name of Marty Martin. He said, don't quit. Anyone can quit. Most people do. People quit on their families. They quit on their kids. They quit on everything because they're quitters. Don't be one of them. And I believe that outside of my parents, him telling me that was the reason Big C Sports is here now. I was talking to my mother about many things she used to do for me when I was in college. She would always send me the local newspaper. And I would read up on the sports page all the time. Not just sports, but news as well. But I would read up on the sports page as well. And I would envision myself like back in the day watching Bryant Gumbel on television. That's one of the first African Americans to cover, as a news anchor. He was one of the first. And then watching Irv Cross on CBS Sports. And imagining that I was sitting in their chair. Those men are multimillionaires. They have the opportunity and they took advantage of it. But I was telling my mother just recently, I said, Mom, I still have a lot of those newspapers you sent me way back in the day when I was in college. She laughed. She said, what are you keeping those for? I said, so my kids can see as we build Big C Sports bigger where it started, like the oak tree, that pine trees in California, the redwoods. You should see them. They're over 300 feet tall. They started with a seed that was so small you could step on it with your foot. And now they're 300 feet tall. And I told her that you planted that seed inside of me a long time ago. And there's some things that are happening right now that people are going to say, and she prophesied already, people are going to say, well, how'd you do that? And it's already happening. I want to just inspire other young people. Stay away from cynical people. Don't even have conversation with negative people. Let them be who they are, but don't be one of them. Believe me, they will change when they see the money. I guarantee that. That was prophesied to me by some older people. And the lady that's worth $500 million that was broke when she was interning. Now she owns over 50 stations and she's worth $500 million, over $500 million. She's going to be interviewed by Big C Sports coming up later in the year. So that's for young people who all want to be whatever they want to be going to the next level. It's not people that get you there. It's your hard work and it's God giving you a favor. You already have the favor. Just do it and don't worry about what people say. You know who's on your team. You know who's on your team. Preseason number 1, college football, Clemson. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3 is Georgia. Number 4 is Oklahoma. Number 5, you have Ohio State. So you have the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, and the Big 10 in the top 5. The next level, we go to Michigan, number 6. Number 7, LSU. Number 8, Notre Dame. Number 9, Florida. And number 10, Texas. You have Michigan out of the Big 10. LSU out of the SEC. Notre Dame independent. Florida out of the SEC. Texas out of the Big 12. The next set is Oregon, number 11 in the country, out of the Pac-12. Number 12, Texas A&M out of the SEC. Number 13, Utah out of the Pac-12. Number 14, Washington, the Huskies out of the Pac-12 conference. They've won at least 10 games over the last 3 seasons. You have number 15, Penn State out of the Big 10. Number 16, Auburn out of the SEC. And then you have Central Florida. That should be an ACC team. They should be. They should move up to a bigger conference. Number 18, Iowa out of the Big 10. Number 19, Nebraska out of the Big 10. Number 20, Stanford out of the Pac-12. Number 21, Syracuse out of the ACC. Number 22, Wisconsin out of the Big 10. Army, independent program. Number 24, Michigan State out of the Big 10. And number 25, Iowa State out of the Big 12 conference. Those are the top 25 college football programs. And I just wish all of them nothing but the best. I want to close out our program today on Friday Night Lights, Big C's Friday Night Lights. I know Big C's doing some traveling. Been a lot of traveling, this summer, and people are doing things with their families. And so their time you just go solo, but you do your thing. In the preseason top 25 programs in the country, this is Big C Sports Friday Night Lights. I just want to say hello to some good friends that gave me an opportunity back in the day. And Andy Bill from Mac Preps used to be Saks Preps back in the day. I worked with Andy Bill. And I remember Andy Bill, he may tell the story someday. But CBS, I'm telling you, Andy Bill, the owner of Max Preps, there was a time when he said, I can't pay you any money because he didn't have any. But you do a good job. Can you just help me out a little bit? And I kept working with him. CBS Sports bought SAC Preps, which was now known as Max Preps, for $30 million. $30 million. I remember that because it was right about the 2001-2002 season. So I'm telling other people, just like Big C Sports will become $100 million company, maybe even $1 billion company. Maybe that just slipped in my mind, but I don't believe anything's by accident. It's not about the money, it's about how many people you can help. I also want to thank Mark Tennis of Cal High Sports. I met Mark Tennis many, many moons ago. His father, his relative, I think his uncle Nelson Tennis, started Cal High Sports, and he's just keep growing his program. There's also, Victor Davis, that I met him back in the days with California Reebok, Nike Combine programs, and there's just so many other people. I may be missing some names, and I also want to thank the late Tom Kelly, former broadcaster of USC football, for opening some doors for me back in the day, and worked with John Madden and the late Pat Summerall in the press box. When I got my first NFL gig, it was John Madden and Pat Summerall. It was Fran Morrison and Mike Roy were the broadcast associates. I don't know where they are now, even if they're still in the business, but I know where I came from, and I appreciate those men for opening doors. And I still have a letter of recommendation from Fran Morrison at Fox Sports, and it was just amazing. But there's a gentleman who got me, David Gibson, African-American man. He was working with NBC Sports at the time with Dick Enberg's crew, and NBC Sports flew me to the Super Bowl. I think it was Super Bowl 33 down in San Diego. It was Green Bay, Brett Favre, and the Denver Broncos, John Elway. I'll never forget that because I was flown there, and they had transportation pick us up. There were so many things that were just amazing about that. It was God's timing. And I just want to say thank you to those people that opened that door. I also believe that when we started our program in Northern California, the station that we were on, they never carried Monday Night Football. They started carrying Monday Night Football because of what Big C brought to the program. I say Charlton and Big C. We were told that by a producer. And I just appreciate the opportunities. But we're going to just do more in the world of sports and the world of entertainment. And I want to thank people that opened that door. So in the meantime, I know a lot of people are getting ready for Happy Friday and Friday Night Lights. I want to just reach out to some of the top 25 high school football programs in the universe. Number one, modern day Santa Ana, California. The back-to-back CIF Open Division State Champions are loaded once again in 2019, led by five-star quarterback Bryce Young and five-star linebacker Reason Davison. This guy's amazing. In 2020, Washington commit Miles Morrow. I'm going to say number two, St. Francis Academy of Baltimore, Maryland. The Panthers haven't lost a game since 2016. And with the talent they bring back, they could run the table for the third consecutive season out of the Baltimore area. And then number three, St. John Bosco, Bellflower, California. You have a dominant program. They have a quarterback by the name of DJ Ukulele. He leads the way for one of the most explosive offenses in high school football that just features a load of players that will go on to the next level. Number four, North Shore High School, Houston, Texas. The defending 6A Division I state champions have one of the most talented teams in the country, led by Zachary Evans and Demetrius Davis Jr. That's a very good football team down in Texas and in the city of Houston. Number five, St. John's out of Washington, D.C. Nobody has a tougher schedule than the number 5 team in the country. And if they finish the year undefeated, expect the D.C. Power to be at number one. I don't think they can jump modern day, but there's a lot of national people out there from Max Preps, Cal High Sports, and Big C Sports Preps. Everybody has their opinion. I think if modern day runs the table, they'll be number one. Number 6, IMG Academy, Bradenton, Florida. The Ascenders are loaded up for the offseason, adding 5-star cornerback Elias Ricks, the 2020 LSU commit Jermaine Burton, and 2020 Clemson commit DeMonte Capehart, to already talented roster down there in Florida. But that team had a 40-game win streak snapped by Modern Day of Santa Ana last year, 28-24. What just a great ball game. If you can't, Google it. Google it. Yeah, like we always say, Google it, Big C. So looking for those great programs to be strong again this year. Number 7, Duncanville, Texas. The 6A Division I state Texas runner-up. They bring back a boatload of talent led by 2020 Texas commit Jaquarvin Jackson and 4-star safety Chris Thompson Jr. and 4-star linebacker Kendrick Blackshire. Duncanville, Texas is loaded. Number 8, St. Joseph Prep out of Philadelphia. Tim Roken takes over for Gabe Infante as head coach, but don't expect the Philadelphia Power to be any different, especially with Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Cole Burrell all returning. That's a very talented team from Pennsylvania. I remember schools like Bowles of Pennsylvania. Actually, there was a Berwick of Pennsylvania back in the day. They had a great program. Now St. Joseph seems to be the top program. Also, Bishop McDivitt used to be great as well. Number 9, Central High School of Miami. South Florida is a hotbed of high school football talent. Like the usual, the Rockets would be one of the best teams from the Sunshine State. They're always loaded at Miami Central. Number 10, St. Thomas Aquinas out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Year in and year out, the Raiders are in the mix when we release the initial top 25. They're more active NFL players than any other high school in the country. Expect a few more players from this team to join that list in the near future. Along with Long Beach Poly, those two programs produce talented players year after year. Number 11, St. Louis High School, Honolulu, Hawaii. The Hawaii Power has gone 34-1 over the last 3 seasons, winning state titles each year during that span. The Crusaders are loaded again, led by 2020 Notre Dame commit Jordan Botello at linebacker and 3-star Jaden DeLamar under center. That's a very good football team. On the islands, they'll play a dominant program from the mainland I'll talk about later in Bishop Gorman. Number 12, Centennial Corona, Southern California, Vontaze Burfict alma mater. This is a great program in Southern California. Corona Centennial, they get a chance to show why they could be the best team in California right off the bat when the Huskies open up against number 1 Mater Dei of Santa Ana. Mater Dei blasted them last year, but that Corona Centennial program, they play at IMG Academy as well as Mater Dei of Santa Ana the last 2 years, so they don't duck anyone. But they're from the Inland Empire, and we'll see how they were tested against number 1 Mater Dei. Number 13, East Side Catholic, Summer Miss Washington. The Crusaders crushed number 13. They cruised to number 13 with the win, a closeout win in the 2018 season. And they bring back one of the most talented teams led by 2020 Ohio State commit G. Scott Jr. and 2020 Washington commit Sam Adams II, and the number 1 player from the class of 2021 in TJ Tumpuala. That's a great team. Eastside Catholic, Summer Miss Washington. There are also great programs in Washington that they'll have to keep up with. Odia is one of them, as well as Bellevue, Washington is another great one. Number 14, Gonzaga out of Washington, D.C. Caleb Williams is the coach. They showed why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country with Caleb Williams, leading Gonzaga to his first WCAC conference title since 2002, while accounting for nearly 500 yards and 6 touchdowns against DeMatha in one game. An amazing player. He's back for his junior season, along with a very talented offensive line. I know there's a lot of people who wonder why these teams are being chosen as the top teams in the country. Again, Cal High Sports, Max Preps, Big C Sports, just our opinions. Another great program is number 15, Archbishop Hoban out of Akron, Ohio. I think LeBron James grew up in Akron, St. Vincent St. Mary's, but Archbishop Hoban, the Akron Power, is going for his 5th straight title, and led by 2020 Arizona State commit DeMonte Tyrone. Now, why would he leave Ohio to go to Arizona? Maybe he likes the heat. Number 20, the 2020 Alabama commit Camden Clark. You have 2 of the great players from Ohio and Archbishop Hoban going to the Pac-12 and the SEC. Where's Ohio State been? They should go recruit that program. They have some great players. I want to go down to the Sunshine State again. Number 16, Lakeland, Florida. They won his first state title since 2006, going 16-0. They beat St. Thomas Aquinas 33-20 in the Florida Class 7A state championships. And the Dreadnoughts are added some of the key transfers and have 5-star running back DeMarcus Bauman returning after rushing for over 2,400 yards and 36 touchdowns in one season. He's a load in the backfield. Number 17, Bishop Gorman, Las Vegas, Nevada. After starting last year 1-3, the Gales finished with 10 straight wins and started to click in one of the year's best players. I think he's one of the best young players. And you can think Micah Bowens is his name. Expect 2020 Penn State commit, a guy leaving Nevada, leaving the West Coast, going to Penn State. He's a 4-star wide receiver. And then Rome Odunze to be one of the best tandems in the country. They will find out how good they are. They travel to St. Louis, Honolulu, Hawaii, and they'll take on that program on the island. I love how high school teams are traveling to play the best. And I believe Bishop Gorman has won about 10 state championships over the last 15 or so seasons in Nevada. I think one of the best high school programs in the country. And many people in Northern California think they're the best in the country. And that's number one, De La Salle, ranked the number one in Northern California, but ranked number 18 nationally. The Spartans have won at least 10 games every year since 2004. Don't expect that to change. This is the program that had a national record 151 game win streak. It started in 1992 when they beat Merced, California, that I talked about earlier in the program, 34-14 at Owen Owens Field in Concord, California. And they rode that win streak for 12 years. They defeated programs from Ohio, programs from Louisiana, and they've just dominated programs from Southern California and Nevada and Utah. And that team, that stretch of wins lasted for 151 games. They won 28 in a row North Coast Section Championships. They finally lost a game to eventual Washington State champion Bellevue, Washington, 39-20. It was at the Kingdome in Seattle, not the Kingdome, but Quest Field, the home of the Seattle Seahawks. But after it was that season, Coach Bob Ladouceur had a heart attack. They had a player that had been tragically, murdered, and so that they had a really bad gloom over them that year. But they still wanted to win a North Coast Section championship. And that De La Salle program, many people in Northern California feel that they have an unfair advantage because of recruiting. And it doesn't matter who you recruit. When they show up, they play good football. I can't wait to see them play St. Thomas Aquinas out of Florida. That game will be in Northern California. I'm going to finish up Big C's Friday Night Lights with a couple of more teams. Number 19, Carol City, Miami, Florida. Florida is the only state with 5 teams in the top 20. And the final school is a very talented Chief squad led by 2020 Alabama commit Thial Jones-Bell. That's a program, along with many of the top schools in Florida. If you get them in the heat and humidity, it's a hard time beating them. But when the Florida programs come out to California, it's about a 50-50 mix. So, and I know Long Beach Poly, back in the day, has snapped Miami Northwestern's 29-game win streak. In Florida, beat them, I think, 29-0. That was about 15 years ago, less than 15 years ago. So it just depends on what year, but I love when the big teams play big teams. Number 20, Allen, Texas. The Eagles have made the Texas State semifinals 7 consecutive seasons and have won at least 10 games every year since 2006. That's Kyler Murray's team. Now the led Oklahoma to greatness in the first NFL pick of the season last year, going to the Arizona Cardinals. Even though they have to replace Grant Tisdale and Theo Wease, expect Raylan Sharp and Bryson Green to put up big-time numbers in the 2019 season. I would love to see Allen, Texas play someone from California or Florida. I think it would be a great game. Just featuring those programs, putting those teams on the map. I love high school football and part of Big C's Friday Night Lights. I'm going to run down the final 25. Number 21, DeMatha, Hyattsville, Maryland. The DeMatha area is one of the top spots at producing football talent, and the Stags make it 4 teams in our initial top 25. Number 22, St. Joseph Regional out of Montville, New Jersey. The first of 4 schools from the New Jersey area is the defending non-public Group 4A champions, and the Green Knights return a lot of key players, led by 2020 Purdue commit Michael Alamino and 2020 Ohio State commit Luke Whippler. Number 23, Dutch Fork from Irmo, South Carolina. Over the last 3 seasons, the Silver Foxes have gone 41-1 and won 3 consecutive Class 5A state titles. Number 24, Marietta, Georgia. This program is going to be dominant this year in the state of Georgia. Injuries and eligibility issues were a huge factor in last year's for the Blue Devils. Expect them to compete for its Class 7A state title in 2019 with a loaded roster led by 2020 Tennessee commit Harrison Bailey. Keep an eye on that kid. Also, 5-star athlete Eric Gilbert, 4-star defensive end B.J. Oroji, and 2020 University of Florida commit Rashad Torrance II. The final program I'm going to mention before I just add just a few more because I love Friday Night Lights. Northern California's Folsom High School at the Sacramento area. For the first time since 2005, the Bulldogs will be without head coach Chris Richardson or Troy Taylor at head coach. Still, expect them to compete at a high level with Paul Doherty taking over. They are loaded on offense with Daniel Nagata, Elijah Badger, and C.J. Hutton all returning. They won a state championship last year in California for Division I. I'm just going to, for proximity purposes, number 26, John Curtis Christian out of River Ridge, Louisiana. Number 27, Nabon Harbor of Harbor City, California. Number 28, Lake Travis of Austin, Texas. Number 29, Miami Northwestern. I told you they had a winning streak of 29 games snapped by Long Beach Poly back in the day out of California. They're number 29 this year. Number 23, McEwen out of Powder Springs, Georgia. And they're expected to be another dominant team in the state of Georgia. I know we brought you a lot on Big C Sports on Friday Night Lights. I love this beautiful August 9th, 2019. This show is all about belief and hope. The dirt comes out in the wash. If you ever have issues like Judge Wapner, you can take people to court or you can settle it amicably. Smart people do it amicably. Egotistical people do it in court, but we're a nation of the law. Everybody has that right. I hope that everybody stays safe. I wish all the kids just the greatest of success going into their next school season, whether it's high school or college. You know who's on your team. You got to know who's on your team. They're the people who are with you when they think you're down. They're the people who are with you when they think you're up. They're the people who don't leave no matter what things are going on in your life. There are people who believe in you. Oftentimes they're parents, sometimes grandparents. It can be brothers and sisters. People got to forgive each other. People got to go on and see the bigger picture. I remember so many things that I was taught growing up. And I love sharing our Big C Sports with high school kids because they still have this hope that they can be anything they want to be. Listen to Tony Robbins. Listen to T.D. Jakes. Whoever inspires you, listen to them. No matter what it is, you got to believe that you can. And every now and then listen to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You just keep believing. I really believe that this is a great country, no matter what our issues are. If we just talk to each other, we can make things better. You can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a TV in the house, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. I really love the app called Alexa. If you say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. You hear me introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing. And I just love where we're growing. I'm telling you, Big C Sports will become a $100 million company, and it's going to happen soon. Everything's already in line for it. Don't listen to people who are not on your team, and don't listen to people who are not in your huddle. Visualize it. Make it come true. Every Monday through Friday at 5 to 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.